they tend to open up. And especially because I'm not in a prison uniform, so they will share a bit more with me than they would with the officers, which is actually really important because it gets them talking about things they wouldn't always feel confident opening up about.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Burnt Chef Journal, a hospitality-specific podcast dedicated to challenging mental health stigma and conversations designed to inspire a new, healthier, happier, and more sustainable hospitality profession.
Hello everybody, my name's Hulya, your Burnt Chef Ambassador, and I'm pleased to be guest hosting a mini-series for the Burnt Chef Project podcast, openly discussing mental health, our brilliant hospitality sector, and an array of topics to create insightful conversations and give you maximum value. I have a brilliant lineup of guests covering everything from psychotherapy, mindfulness, diet hang-ups, cooking therapy, all the way to spirituality. Now, did you know that 4 out of 5 hospitality professionals report having experienced at least one mental health issue during their career? The Burnt Chef Project is a globally recognised not-for-profit social enterprise fully committed to making the hospitality profession healthier and more sustainable by focusing on people's well-being first. This is why it has never been more important to be talking about our mental health and well-being. For more information on this amazing project, go to www.theburntchefproject.com. A little bit about me. I'm a transformation coach, an obsessed master of self-discovery, guiding women to believe in themselves, find the motivation to take action and create a life they truly believe in and are excited about. I'm also a professional chef with over 20 years in the hospitality sector, an educator, radio broadcaster, and writer. Through my own life experiences, including 2 divorces, domestic abuse, depression, and homelessness, I learned firsthand that to make any real change in your life, you have to start from within. You can find me online at therecipeforlife.com. Now, so excited about my podcast topic this week. It's one very close to my own heart. How can cooking support our mental health? And joining me is an incredible chef, criminologist, head of food education in prison, Natalia Middleton. Now, Natalia has been in the hospitality sector since the age of 15 after studying criminology at Auckland University, New Zealand. She came to the UK to train as a professional chef at world-renowned Leiths School of Food and Wine. Natalia now heads up food education for Food Behind Bars, focusing on food in prisons and training prisoners so they are empowered through the love of food and cooking, and supporting them to gain employment in the hospitality industry upon release. Natalia is also an ambassador for Be Inclusive Hospitality, which helps create a more diverse and inclusive hospitality industry. She has also been featured in the Code Hospitality 30 Under 30 2022 list and the Code 100 Most Influential Women in Hospitality 2022 in their community section.
The Burnt Chef Project is proudly sponsored by Lamb Weston, a leading provider of innovative, high-quality potato products created for chefs to help operators thrive both today and tomorrow. Working carefully with sustainably minded farmers and growers, Lamb Weston provides potato solutions for every type of kitchen, from premium British chips and fries to potato shapes, wedges and mash. To find out more, head to lambweston.eu or search Your Partner in Potatoes.
Oh my gosh, I feel absolutely breathless. Natalia, welcome to the Burnt Chef Project podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to be on and hopefully share some insights about what I do.
Amazing. And honestly, I'm so impressed by the things that you've done. I mean, seriously, criminology, chefing. I mean, my question actually is going to be first, criminology to chefing? How? Why?
That's a very fair question, and one I get actually quite a lot. To be honest, when I left high school in New Zealand, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And luckily for me, my parents said, go to uni and do something you're interested in and get a degree. And that's the first step. So I've always been interested in the subject of criminology, why people commit crimes, how we can help them to stop and things like that. So I did criminology. I actually minored in ancient history. So I think there were 3 of us in the whole university doing that degree, but it was really awesome. So I did that. And actually, the way I got into chefing was in my second year of my criminology degree. My nana passed away really suddenly, and I really struggled. I took 6 months off. I came to the UK and I just spent some time kind of finding myself, loving life. And whilst I was here, I did a month-long cooking course at Leiths School of Food and Wine. And in that month, I thought, hold on a second, I really love cooking. This is something that I want to do. So I went back to New Zealand, finished my criminology degree because I had to finish it. There was no way I wasn't going to finish. And then pretty much as soon as I finished, I came back to London and did my full 9-month diploma in food and wine at Leiths. And yeah, been doing it ever since.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Exactly.
You know, I'm sure there are many people that will probably totally and utterly relate to that. I certainly can myself. I started in marketing and PR, and then it was actually when I was in my 30s, because I am going to say Natalia is actually is only just turned 30. I mean, seriously, wow. And, you know, I actually trained as a chef when I was about 32 years old. I'd always cooked, and you know, culturally, my life's food and cooking, but I was in PR marketing, and then I sort of fell into the chef sector at the age of 32, and 20 years ago, and the rest is history. So yes, you know, I could totally relate to that. And how incredible is that? So of course, you got this criminology degree. You've now, you know, done the chefing, the full-on chefing diploma. Amazing. And what was that like, actually? What was that like in the kitchen for that 9 months? Tell me about that.
It was both the best thing I've done and sometimes potentially the worst thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Not for any other reason than I think a lot of us who were there, we knew that it was a career path. So we took it very, very seriously. And if things didn't go quite right, I remember one day we were filleting a fish. It was probably the first time I'd filleted a fish, and I could not get the hang of it. So I started crying. But it's, you know, I think people think, oh, you're just going to culinary school, it's pretty relaxed. It was 9 months of hard work. You know, you're doing homework every night. You've got practical exams. You've got theory exams. You have other little projects to do as well. And for me, it was actually the first time I've realized, so I have 𝗴𝗂𝗀𝗁𝗃, which is basically maths dyslexia. And I've always been lucky enough to have support, you know, through high school. To get into uni, I had to have extra help. And this was sort of the first time I was on my own, having to deal with that in a setting where actually maths is used loads. And it was really hard. I remember it being a real struggle. One of the exercises we had to do was a costing exercise. We had to use Excel. We had to cost out ingredients. We had to add up all the totals, and I actually couldn't do it. And I thought, this is going to make me fail. And I think, I won't lie, I think in the end I just sent it to my dad and he did it for me. But I still tried. That was the main thing. I did try. But no, Leiths was amazing. Yeah, I did love it. I really did.
Yeah. So incredible. But also it's really nice that, you know, you can talk so openly about that and be able to relate to that as an experience yourself in the challenges that you face, the challenges that you've had in your life, and really touching in on the topic, you know, we're talking about today, that, you know, how food can be such a support, actually, such a salvation, such a, you know, an important part of our lives in so many ways, right?
Definitely. And for me it is. And it's, I think the one thing you know, everyone always says, oh, well, why don't you do so much baking, or why aren't you into pastry? And it's because of that sort of maths element, my brain just doesn't get it. Whereas give me, and actually I think my husband finds it really irritating. He'll say, oh, we have nothing in the house. And I'll open the fridge or I'll open the cupboards. And I absolutely love being able to say, no, we do. I can make something out of, we have a few potatoes. We've got some veg. We've got some sauces. I will make us dinner from that. And that's probably my favorite thing to do, is just create something new, cooking. I find it really relaxing. Yeah, I say that. I find it really relaxing when I'm in the kitchen on my own.
Yeah. I was going to say quick caveat. Yeah.
Not that my husband isn't helpful, but sometimes I have set ways I like to do things, and he kind of sometimes gets in the way. So if I have, the other day I made some slow cooker pork cheeks that I got given by one of the prisons we work with, which is
amazing.
We'll talk about that later. But I just thought, okay, I'm going to make something really delicious. And my husband was asleep on the sofa, and I spent an hour and a half prepping the pig's cheeks, prepping all the veg, getting them in the slow cooker, and just cooking a really delicious pork cheek stew that we had later that day. And I just thought, actually, this is perfect. This is why I do what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's therapeutic. It's just, food is therapy, isn't it? It's from, eating it, enjoying it, the things that we eat, but also the actual process of the cooking, the buying of the ingredients, the chopping, because one of my guests was a mindfulness coach and food mindfulness. And, and actually cooking is about being able to get into that zone of mindfulness, isn't it? That zone, that space where you can just be yourself.
Right.
100%.
And especially the things. So I worked at School of Wok for 2 years as one of their chef tutors.
Right.
And one of the things I really worked out whilst I was there is how relaxing I find repetitive things.
Yeah.
So lots of chopping of ingredients, because you can kind of get into the zone of that. And then kneading and rolling and folding things like dumplings.
Wow.
I would make 200 in a day just because it was really relaxing. And whenever I need to clear my head, I go for a walk, either on my own or with the dog, headphones in, listen to some music, and then I come home and I cook something that involves lots of repetitive processes. And then after that, I feel pretty good. So
it's amazing. Yeah. See, that's a really good tip, everybody, to actually engage in that cooking. And the repetitiveness of it, of just chopping for an hour. Do you know what I mean? Or, just cooking, or, going out for a walk, anything like that. And any kind of repetitive movement, it does actually really help you to clear your head. And then that's when you actually get insights and little aha moments, actually, when you are in that zone of just doing the same thing. So washing the dishes is a very key mindfulness technique, actually, and actually just fully immersing yourself in the process of washing the dishes, the warm water and the soaping and actually washing off the dirt of the dishes and then actually rinsing them and then the drying of them. So again, with cooking, it's peeling the onion, then cutting it in half and then chopping it and dicing it and all the other elements that go with that is just such a lovely activity. So I want to sort of ask you, because obviously you got into food education, so you said that you worked at the School of Wok, you were teaching. What sort of led you into wanting to do the teaching side of cooking rather than actually going into a hot, sweaty kitchen, and actually working as a chef in a restaurant or whatever?
So that's actually a really interesting one. I did work in a few restaurants. I worked in some really big mass catering production kitchens, and that was a really hard graft. And it was there's a couple of things. So firstly, working in that environment just wasn't good for me mentally. I was working really terrible hours. Sometimes I'd be in the kitchen at 8 a.m. and not getting home until midnight, which was a long day. I wasn't seeing my husband. And this was before we got married, but we were sort of passing ships, and that just wasn't great for me. I was working weekends, so I never got to see my friends. So my mental health just completely dived. But then the other side of it is I have a condition called endometriosis, which is a chronic pain condition that affects 1 in 10 people with reproductive organs in the world. And it's very painful, debilitating illness, basically. And I just couldn't do it anymore, unfortunately. And teaching was a way of being able to share my skills, my knowledge, interact with people, which I love doing, but also have a job that was slightly more structured, more 9 to 5-ish, or, you know, at least hours that weren't insane. And so for me, that was really important. It was whilst I was at Leiths, seeing the other teachers, I thought, okay, I could probably do this somehow. I didn't really know what processes I needed to do. And basically what I did was just push Leiths once I'd left. I'd just message them and say, hey, can I come in and do some freelance teaching? Am I allowed to come in and shadow? Can I learn from the best, basically? And I think they got so sick of me begging them that one day they said, yes, come on. So I worked there as a freelance teacher for about 2 years, which I really loved. And whilst I was there, I just off my own back decided, okay, I need to do something to solidify everything I've learned. So I did my level 3 City and Guilds teaching further education qualification, which was really, really useful. And I really enjoyed doing it. I'm one of those people who has kind of always loved learning in some form. So really worthwhile for me. And that sort of has, that's basically opened a lot of doors to get into School of Wok. Obviously, you have to have cooking skills and that kind of thing. But just having that little teaching certificate on the CV has certainly helped. So that's how I got into teaching. And I'm really pleased I did, because I love it so much. And now, especially in the job I do, it's even more important and rewarding for me. So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, it is rewarding, isn't it? I know I've been teaching for about 15 years now, and, you know, teaching a whole section of people, from adults to young learners. And it's very enlightening, I think, and so beautiful when you have seen these people develop, when you see your students actually growing and learning and actually really loving what they're doing as well, and appreciating the joy of cooking and knowing how to cook, right? It's such a key skill. It honestly is. And I think it's just so amazing. You know, we need more educators, cookery teachers, and, you know, and we need the schools to continue to teach kids and keep cooking on the menu, you know, keep cooking on their curriculum, because I think it is so important to actually learn it from a young age. Did you have any kind of learning, a background of cooking when you were young, when you were little in your family, Natalia?
Yeah, I learned a lot from my nana. I was one of those kids who would, if there was food somewhere, I was normally around it. So I was pretty much always in the kitchen. My mum, not so much now, but when we were younger, my mum, I was lucky enough that long story, but we lived in the UK before we moved to New Zealand, and my dad used to run restaurants in London. So I kind of spent a lot of my childhood in and out of those, around food, you know, a lot of different cultures in our family. I was born in Brazil, my dad's English, my mum's a Kiwi. So food has always been a really big part of everything we do. You know, we had a Thai nanny growing up. And so my love of Thai food has been around for a long time, and flavors that, you know, I was lucky enough to learn about and understand from a young age. So
it's amazing. I mean, look, it was written on the cards, Natalia. It was in there. It was written for you already. I think it was your destiny. This was your destiny. So now, fast forward today, and you work for an organization called Food Behind Bars. You are actually head of education for Food Behind Bars. Now, Food Behind Bars is a charity. Am I right? Are they actually a charity?
Yes.
So tell me more about that.
Food Behind Bars is, as you say, a charity. It was started as a campaign to talk about food in prison and the state of food in prison by my boss, Lucy Vincent, who was a journalist at the time. And we have now officially been a charity for just over 2 years. I was the first employee last year. I started as the development chef, and I am now head of food education, which is my dream job. It's amazing for me. I couldn't, when it came up online, I actually couldn't believe that it existed. I think I even remember, it was quite bold of me, before I had applied, I sent Lucy a message saying, this is my dream job. I will get this, which was probably a bit pushy, but I wanted I needed everyone to know that I was going to fight for this. So yeah, as I said, we're a charity and we work across prisons in England and hopefully long-term across the UK. So the furthest north we work at the moment is Yorkshire, and we work with quite a few prisons in the Midlands and down in London as well. And we do a lot of different things. We have a butchery project at an open women's prison in Kent, which is incredible. So we have employed an amazing butcher trainer who does a program with the women there. We have run street food entrepreneurial courses, which have been really popular and the men really love. We have done HMP's Best Chef competitions, which was something that was run throughout the COVID pandemic as a kind of way to boost morale in various different prisons, and has been amazing. And we've met some incredible men and women through that. We also do menu and recipe development. So the main thing that Food Behind Bars do and want to do is improve the food that men and women are eating in prisons in their day-to-day life. So at the moment, it's quite difficult to do that. The budget for food in prisons is minute. It's roughly £2.10 per prisoner per day for 3 meals.
Wow, no way. What? I see that. I didn't know that. Oh my goodness me.
If you're enjoying this week's episode, consider heading over to our website and supporting our ongoing work in destigmatizing mental illness and creating a healthier, happier, and more sustainable industry by purchasing some of our branded merchandise. We have a whole range of t-shirts, hoodies, chef's jackets, wellbeing journals, plus a whole host more available on worldwide dispatch. All funds raised from sales of these items go towards free to access e-learning content, as well as providing free support systems and help for those who may be experiencing difficulty with their mental health.
So it's a real struggle.
Yeah.
There's also one ingredient supplier for every single prison in the UK.
Wow.
Which is also a very difficult thing to deal with.
Yeah.
But it's a real challenge, but we are lucky enough, one of the prisons that we work with, they had some incredible big greenhouses that weren't being used. So we managed to put in a new irrigation system for them. We got some volunteers in, we got seeds for them, we got compost. So they have been planting an incredible array of vegetables. We sent the prison officers off on a beekeeping course. So
brilliant. No way.
Yeah. And it was amazing. But the best thing is, so they've now got 3 hives, I think. So we can start producing honey from next year. But it's been brilliant. So the officers who went out on the course have then come in and trained the prisoners in how to look after the bees, which is, interestingly, beekeeping is really good for your mental health. So
yeah. Wow. Because I suppose that's the game. That's the ultimate thing, isn't it? That, you're setting up all these different projects and creating all these things that, with the greenhouse and the beehive. But ultimately, it's for the betterment of the prisoners. Ultimately, it's for the good of the prisoners, so that the prisoners gain these skills, right?
Exactly. So that's the overarching thing. So basically, our main things that we want to do is improve the food that they're eating so that they feel better about themselves. It tends to be really high carb, not very much protein, and not very much fruit and veg. Basically, the reason that there's so many carbs is so that the men and women sleep a lot, so they're not that active. So for example, in most prisons, they get given their breakfast, which is a pack. So it has usually a piece of bread, maybe some cereal, some long life milk, a couple of tea bags, some sugar, and a coffee sachet. They get given that with their dinner the night before, so that they, can choose when they eat it. But the problem is they're having their lunch, and I'm talking, your normal main meal of the day. They have it anywhere between 10:30 in the morning and 11. So they're eating their lunch really early, and then they're getting their evening meal roughly about 5 o'clock. Yeah. So unless they can afford to supplement food from canteen, which is like the prison tuck shop, basically, then they're eating at really weird times of the day. They're having a really high carb meal. They go to work really early in the morning. They come back to their cell for lunch. So 11 o'clock, they get locked in their cell with their food, which they eat. They then stay in their cell until about 1:30, 2 o'clock. So in that time, they don't have much to do. They can watch TV, maybe they can read, they can sleep. But the worst thing is they're eating alone most of the time, unless they share. But they've got their loo right next to them. They have their bin, and most of the time they don't have covers on their loos. So they're just sitting alone, basically miserable, eating food that's actually not always the best. Now, there are prisons and catering managers that are doing really brilliant things and really doing their best with the budget. So I can't, I'm not saying it's all prisons.
That's right.
You have to say that.
Absolutely.
And it's true. There are a lot that do really wonderful things. And then that is a really tough part. And interestingly, so every 2 weeks, I work with a group of young men aged 18 to 27 in a prison in the Midlands. And we do cooking lessons in their staff bistro, but all the food that we cook is used for staff lunch that day, so that the staff can come in and buy it. And it's really great because the men are out of their cells or pads, whatever you want to call it, all day. So from about 8:30 in the morning until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So they don't need to go back. They get to have slightly different food. And then when we're up there, we're always teaching them new dishes, exciting dishes. I was actually there yesterday, and, I love going there because I've worked with the same group of men for just over a year now. And so I've really seen their progress, and they get so excited and they love being creative and trying new things. So yesterday, for example, we cooked a vegetarian Thai red curry. We did turmeric rice. We did curry flavored chicken with peanut satay sauce. And we did, they were delicious. We did soy, ginger, and spring onion roast potatoes that actually come from a friend of mine's cookbook. So it's, it's just really nice to give them different ideas. And they wrote on their feedback forms, we loved trying new ways with potatoes. We would have never thought of this. And they'll say, hey, Nat, come and look at this. Come and see how well my knife skills have improved. Or, I've really been practicing. Or, hey, I told my mum about this dish. We're going to make it when I'm out. Or, thanks so much for letting me make the coriander chutney this week. I got to make it the way my mum did. And it's just little things like that really, it's amazing. Because it's been the same group or a very similar group, sometimes they change. Sometimes they get naughty and they get fired, but that's prison life. These things happen. But the core of them have stayed the same. And because we've been able to build a rapport, they tend to open up. And especially because I'm not in a prison uniform, so they will share a bit more with me than they would with the officers, which is actually really important because it gets them talking about things they wouldn't always feel confident opening up about. So, for example, one of the young men was going to an open prison, which is category D, so getting ready to be released. And an open prison is very different to the closed setting. And he said to me before he left, he said, Nat, I'm really nervous. I've been inside for 5 years. I don't know what to expect in an open prison. So, I was able to give him some ideas of what he could do and who he can go and talk to, and telling him that actually it's okay to open up and explain that he's feeling this way and that it's normal. And then actually yesterday we were having a conversation, because one of the young guys, he used to say to me, Nat, when I'd get really angry, and when I used to get really angry, I'd turn to alcohol and I would drink a lot, and that's the reason I'm in jail. But, he's been in for 3 years now. And he said to me yesterday, he said, now when I'm angry, I go to the gym or I exercise. So he's been able to realize that actually moving his body and exercising is a really positive thing. And I said to him, I think I mentioned to them that I'd been to the gym the day before. And I think that they quite like the fact that women go to the gym. But for me, I said to him yesterday, I've been struggling with my mental health recently. I've had a few blips, I've not been able to do the things I normally could do because of an ankle injury. And because of that, I've had to use the gym and the machines in the gym because they require less use of my legs. And in the beginning, I hated going to the gym. I couldn't understand the point of it. And now I love it. And for him to hear another person say, A, that they suffer with their mental health, but B, talk about things that they do that work and help them, his face lit up. And so it's as much as I'm a chef and a teacher and a cook and a recipe writer and developer and all those kind of things, I'm also like a therapist sometimes, or a mentor, or a or just a safe space that they can talk to. And I think people forget that those things are really important in life as well. So yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think this is what cooking can do. I do a bit of cooking therapy within some of my coaching work, and it's interesting to be able to see that when you're engaged in an activity like that, how much people open up to you. And actually what's interesting is that the fact that, let's say, they don't have to necessarily give you eye contact, because they've got this almost what is a bit like a buffer. And I see it with young people, with teenagers who I teach. When you're engaged in mixing dough, making bread, kneading or chopping or filleting or deboning or whatever, and as we talk it through, I find the kids opening up and are more able to talk about certain things and talk about their feelings and talk about what's going on. And I've always found that sometimes when you've got that little buffer and you've got the cooking there as a support, people do open up. I guess in some ways what's lovely about what you do and what you've seen as well is that, like you said, they don't see you as one of the prison guards or in a uniform or a threat. And actually they see you more as somebody who is in some ways there to support them, to help them, to give them these wonderful skills. And therefore an element of trust has been built up, isn't it? Because that's so crucial, especially if you're going through something as well. I'm really interested to ask, especially about, say, the prisoners and the comments that they make, and particularly around mental health, because I imagine that many of them, based on some of the things that you've said, I can imagine that it can be quite stressful and difficult for them to be in such a institutionalized environment, and an environment where there is the possibility, I don't know, of loneliness and feeling helpless. And how do you feel that the cooking and the education and the teaching and having them involved in the things you're doing, how do you feel that has helped them?
That's a really good question. And you're right. I think there is a lot of men and women in prison suffer hugely with their mental health, especially during COVID. And that's been a real thing that has stuck around. For example, during COVID, they were locked in their cells for 23 hours a day. They had enough time to get out and have a shower, basically, and sometimes call their loved ones, but that is it. And the rest of the time they were in their cells. So it's been tough for them. Some of them really struggle. A lot of them are heavily medicated, which is really tough. And it means that they then gain weight. And so they struggle with their body image as well. So there's a lot of them trying to control what they eat. So they'll try and work out ways to count calories and exercise loads, which isn't necessarily a wonderful thing. So what we try and do when we do our classes and we go into the prisons is, we always try and be a really positive and happy place for them to be. And we try and create that environment of, they know they're in prison. We don't need to remind them of that. So let's just talk about other things. We don't really ask them about, unless they want to and they sort of push it, we don't talk about those things. And I try and keep it nice and light and fun. And we have conversations and we put music on. So we try and make it a really nice, relaxed environment. I mean, yesterday they had the football on because it's the World Cup on their desk, which is totally fine. But even for 2 seconds, if it gives you something to talk about that's not being in prison, then I think that's great. And so I work with my same core group, but then I do shorter cooking classes with the groups that I don't actually know that well. And even yesterday on the feedback form, one of them just said it was really nice to have some normal social interaction and be treated like a human being. And I think that's a really big thing. And especially with these young men, yes, they're in prison. Yes, they've obviously done something not great. But if you look into, this is where my criminology degree comes in, if you look at the reasons why they're in there, it's usually to do with poverty, or they have a parent who's already in, or they grew up in gangs, or, around violence and domestic abuse and things like that. So for a lot of them, it was inevitable, really. So you can't treat them like they're dirt. And unfortunately, and I remember probably a month ago, actually, we did an exercise for Black History Month. And it was, they just had to write down, what do you want people to know about your culture or your background? And a lot of the men, especially in London prisons, are from ethnic minority backgrounds, which can also be very difficult in prison. And they were writing things like, and it was honestly heartbreaking, writing things like, not all Black men are bad, we don't all smell, not, some of us can swim, and just all these sort of stereotypical things that they have clearly had to deal with outside before they came in, and probably are still dealing with inside. It was quite a big eye-opener. And so for me, my rule is always treat them like a human being. I try and actively avoid not knowing what their sentence is or what they're in for unless they tell me, because sometimes it's important for them to tell you so that you can, break down those barriers and give them ideas and things like that, which is fine.
Absolutely.
But if I don't know what they're in for, you just treat them all as humans. And
that's right. Well, this is a great thing about cooking, though, isn't it? Cooking brings us all together, irrelevant of race, religion, irrelevant of color, culture, whatever, anything. We're all humans. We're all one, and we're all the same. And actually cooking unites us in that it's a language, isn't it? It's a shared language. It's a shared experience. And I think that's what's important. And it would be lovely to hear more about the success stories, because I know as part of the Food Behind Bars project, as part of your work, as well as then teaching them in the prisons, empowering them with this incredible skill, the prisoners that are released go on to get jobs in hospitality. And let me just say, I'm going to tell everybody, and I'm always singing the praises of hospitality, because it's my industry, it's our industry, and we love it, and we love it so much that what's wonderful about hospitality is it's so welcoming of people from all backgrounds, from all experiences. If you've got the skill, you're in. The hospitality industry, and I'm not saying everybody, but as a whole, is so welcoming. No matter who you are, if you can cook and you've got the skill, then there is progression, there is opportunities for you. That's what I feel anyway. And so, it would be nice to hear about some of the success stories that you've had out of this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I'm just going to put a little hint out there. If you are an employer in the hospitality sector and you can employ people who have been released, please do. even if you're just doing a job trial, get them in, get them through the doors, show them what you're about, sell yourselves to them, because
yes.
Honestly, I have some of the prison kitchens I have been to are better run than restaurant kitchens and catering kitchens I've worked in, and they know how to work hard. So please, if you can, think about employing from places that you wouldn't normally think to hire from. That's just going to be my little push.
Definitely agreed.
In terms of success stories, this is an interesting one. The reality is it can be really difficult to get the people in and staying in, especially if they've been in on a long sentence and they're so institutionalized. For the first few weeks, you almost need to babysit them at a new job. So it's sometimes a case of also sometimes they don't have a bank account when they get released. They don't have a phone. They don't have an email. So these are all things that we help them with. So, we've got people mobiles, we've got them tablets so that they have access to emails and things like that. But, we've actually just last week, one of the young men we've been working with who won one of our HMP best chef competitions and had his curry on a restaurant menu. He's just been in for a job trial. So we're just waiting to hear back from that. But, he's ready, he's keen, he's hardworking, which is really exciting. We had another couple. They're all at the stage of still in the process of applying, but we're getting there, which is really exciting. And then we have some people who actually decide they don't need our help because of the circumstances. They've already got the support that they need. But we get emails saying, "Hey Nat, just wanted to let you know I'm doing really well." Not all of them go into cooking. They tend to quite enjoy physical jobs. So a lot of them they'll cook in prison because it's, therapy and it's a good job. It keeps them out of their cells. But then when they're out, they'll go into like scaffolding or something where they can use their bodies because they've not necessarily used them for so long. And they like being outside and that kind of thing. But, we get them always checking in, saying, "Hey, we're okay. We're doing this."
Wow.
So
that's really nice.
We're getting there. And we've got a few more coming out over the next few months, which we'll be helping with. So
amazing.
We'll just.
And do you offer support to them on the outside? Are you? Yes. You are still in touch with them. You are still supporting them on the outside.
Yes, we definitely are. They have our email. They have our phone numbers. I've been chatting to a couple today, actually, just making sure that. So tomorrow, in fact, I'm doing a cooking class for prisoners who have been released and are struggling with ideas for cooking with limited equipment, limited ingredients, cooking on a budget, that kind of thing. So we tend to see quite a few of them come to that because they just like being able to see us, they like the social interaction, and they like the ideas. So it's a really exciting thing to do, and they really enjoy it. So I'm seeing a few of them tomorrow.
That's so beautiful. I think that warms my heart so much. And what's really great, I think, with cooking and with a skill, learning a skill and teaching a skill like cooking, it gives them hope, doesn't it? It gives them hope that they can actually leave prison and there is something for them to do. There's always a job available, no matter where, because the thing is with cooking, isn't it? No matter where you are in the world, when you have a practical skill like that, it doesn't matter where you go, what part of the country you live in, where you are in the world, you can always get a job because you know how to cook.
Exactly. And that's the real important thing for us is, a lot of them will say, "Now, we're not into that. We're not that into cooking. We don't really care about it at the beginning." And then by the end of it, we've managed to say, "Hey, you're actually pretty good at this. Maybe you should look at a job in a restaurant," or, some of them are so good at front of house and something like a cafe job where it's still in the day, the hours are great, they would absolutely thrive in. And you get them thinking and then they go, "Yeah, okay, I would like to do that." This always makes me laugh. But a lot of people in prison have a very good business mindset. And
I love that.
They have really great entrepreneurial skills. And so a lot of them, when they get released, create their own food businesses, like street food vans and things like that, or that's what they want to do. So the fact that we've had our street food course has been really exciting. And for us, we've linked in with 𝗂𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. based in London, and they're amazing. So they run a sort of street food entrepreneurial program, and we've actually, I'm hoping they're in now, but we have been able to get some laptops with the course already on into 𝗴𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗃 ISIS, which is a young offenders prison in London, so that the young men can start the course and do it whilst they're inside, so that they're ready to go and sort of follow this pathway with 𝗂𝗏 once they're out, so they can do
Brilliant.
weeks of work experience and training with 𝗂𝗏. They then get a job interview, and then they can go into a job at the end if they want. So they have sort of a set pathway ready for when they leave.
Brilliant. Oh my God, that is just, oh my goodness, I'm so excited about that. That is just brilliant. Just so happy that the young prisoners, the young men, they can go out there and there is an opportunity for them already. You know, it's available. It's available from the time they're in to then when they get out. I think that is so fantastic. So do you give them a little bit of advice to manage their mental health when they are in those situations, when they are in the work situation, once they do get out? Is there support for them? Do you help them how to manage themselves within a kitchen as well? Do you give them that kind of advice too?
Yes, I do. I try and keep it to not necessarily just in work, but obviously kitchens are a high stress environment a lot of the time. So we try and help give them skills, especially myself, because I've been in that environment. I can give them ideas of what I did or what I used to do when I was in those environments. So for me, it was always not necessarily things whilst I was in the kitchen, but things I would do before I got to work or at the end of the day to help make sure my day went well. So I would always make sure it was, you know, have a good breakfast, make sure I've got water in the kitchen with me all the time. Yes, that might mean you need to go to the loo a bit more, but keeping yourself hydrated is really key. Having lots of veg, lots of protein, getting out in the sunshine hours or taking
daylight, seeing daylight.
Huge.
Kitchens are in the basement or wherever it is. Yeah,
exactly. So, you know, for me, it would always be, I would try and walk to work as much as possible or get off the tube a few stops earlier so I can get some fresh air and get some daylight before I go into the dungeon, as it, you know, it usually is. Things like that. But then also for me, sometimes being in a high stress environment kicks in my anxiety, and you can get panic attacks or get quite panicky. So I have a Fitbit, and on my Fitbit, there is a little, you can click through and it gives you something where it helps your breathing. So if I need to do that, I'll just flick that over and follow my breathing until I calm myself down. Or, you know, sometimes if I've maybe had too many coffees in the day because I just needed to keep awake a little bit longer, I get probably too much caffeine, I get a bit panicky. So I would do like grounding exercises. So wherever I was, I would sort of say, weirdly, it happens a lot on the tube. I think it's because it's an enclosed space. But I'll be like, you know, I'm getting on the tube. I am at this station. I can see these posters around me. It's little things like that that they don't necessarily think of is quite important. Because a lot of them, it's just like, oh, you know, go to the gym, eat well, go to bed early. But it's the extra things. And, you know, for a lot of them, but I think it's quite interesting. A lot of them choose when they get released, if they have the opportunity to not go back to where they were when they went into prison. And I think that it must be really difficult for them. But if you are able to, I think it's fantastic, because then you know you're not in the environment that put you in there. So lots of them choose to move away from, you know, if they're London based, they'll move out of London. If they're based, they might move to London, for example.
Yeah, so it's really sensible, isn't it? It's really sensible. I think, you know, a lot of the time when you've been in a certain situation is actually really important to disconnect yourself, actually, to disconnect and move away from that place in order to be able to rehabilitate, to be able to start over, start a new life, a new beginning, and reconnect to your own self. and what's good for you and what's going to serve you best. So I think that is actually really important. Yeah, thank you. So Natalia, it's been really enlightening. You've really opened my eyes to the work that you do, and the incredible work that you do actually, and to these amazing men and women who actually get to learn this beautiful skill and come out and hopefully come into the sector. We need you. So, please pursue the career, because it's absolutely worthwhile. But in the same breath, managing your mental health as well. And I think that is so amazing. So Natalia, tell everyone where they can find you, where they can find more about Food Behind Bars, and how can people actually get involved.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been really great to chat. You can find us on Twitter at Food Behind Bars. You can find us at foodbehindbars.co.uk. And you can also find us on Instagram at Food Behind Bars. You can also find me at 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗃 on Instagram. I've been a little bit quiet on there recently, but I am trying to get back into it. And I'm also on Twitter at 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃, but I do talk about a lot of Love Island on there, so maybe it's not the most exciting. As we said right at the beginning, Food Behind Bars is a charity, so donations so we can keep up our work is hugely important. Every now and then we post little fundraising things online. So recently we were requesting baking books for a prison bakery. So if you ever see those and you have spare cookbooks, either please get in touch with us or find your local prison, and you can usually send them there. They love books.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I just gave a whole load away. Oh, my God. I gave them all to Oxfam. I mean, it was a worthy cause. I gave them all to Oxfam. But, oh, my God, I had a massive clear out of all my cookery books, because I was literally caving under the under the sheer weight of all the books. But I shall remember that. Okay, Next time I have a clear out, I shall remember that.
Yeah. And we have fundraising events throughout the year. We had one a few months ago, and we are doing one hopefully in January or February, where we will be getting the women on our butchery course involved. So they'll be doing some demonstrations and cooking some food. So that's in the pipeline now. So keep an eye out for that. But also, I think my biggest thing about how you can get involved is we have a Food Behind Bars podcast, which Lucy, my boss, did. And it's really, really eye-opening. But talk about prison food, talk about why it's important that men and women are fed the right things. And just remember that people aren't always bad in prison, and to treat those that you meet like human beings. And please employ people who have left prison. That's huge. But otherwise, just follow us. Talk about us, share us on your socials. All those kinds of things are really, really important.
Amazing. Definitely. Everything she said, right? So quick, get and follow. Right. Natalia, it's been amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you being here. And thank you very much, everybody. And check back again soon.
Yeah, thank you.